So the pro-choice movement doesn't like the abortion bans. Why? Because it holds men responsible for their actions. Hey everyone, I'm Kristen Hawkins. Welcome to this edition of Explicitly Pro-Life. Are you subscribed to Explicitly Pro-Life? I don't know. Make sure you subscribe at YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere where you can get your podcast on. Okay, so I wanted to just talk briefly today about all of these men who are kind of speaking up in light of the Alabama and Georgia and Ohio and Missouri abortion bans, and women who are actually speaking up for men, saying men should be alarmed right now. They should be worried about the state of abortion rights, the state of reproductive health care in our nation. I would say that I think men probably should be concerned, especially if they date liberal women who are pro-abortion, because, Alyssa Milano is still leading her sex strike. I wonder how that's going on with her dating life. And I don't know if she's married or not. I thought she was, but so I think if I was a liberal guy who dated liberal women, pro-abortion women, I'd be a little concerned right now if the sex strike was still going to go on. But the reason why the abortion industry keeps telling men they should be alarmed and is raising the alarm bells here is because they're saying, look, men, you are going to, abortion's changing things for you. And I couldn't agree with them more. These abortion laws that restrict abortion are changing things for men because they're going to force men to be responsible. And that's not a bad thing. When the sex strike and all the women were rising up against the Alabama heartbeat bill and then the Georgia heartbeat bill and the Alabama bill, what was interesting and was so telling to me was it's almost like this fear of these abortion restriction laws are going to force me to change the way I live my life. That's why I'm so scared right now, because what abortion is seen for so many in our society, both men and both for women, the two genders, is it's seen as like this parachute, right? This last minute option. Even if you don't like abortion, or you might call yourselves, pro-life, or say, well, I would never have an abortion. It's always in the back of your mind. It's that just in case my birth control fails and I get pregnant, I have this last minute option that I can choose. I can choose abortion if I want to. And when you have laws like Alabama's and Georgia's being passed and Missouri and Ohio, I keep adding the states on, it starts to make women who are living, a lifestyle that is having sex outside of a committed relationship to start re-examine their choices, right? Because if abortion's no longer an option to you, you might want to reconsider who you're sleeping with, because a very natural consequence of having sex is procreation. It's creating another human being. And if you're having sex with somebody who you can't see yourself having a baby with, maybe you shouldn't have sex with them. I mean, I think it's like pretty common sense. When I say this on college campuses, though, you can hear a pin drop. It's like they've never heard this before. Because, with abortion, and then really when you're talking about birth control, and you're going back to the birth control revolution, like the eugenicist Margaret Sanger, who, was the founder of the American Birth Control League, because she felt that certain classes of people shouldn't be allowed to reproduce, and Planned Parenthood still celebrates her anyway. That's a whole nother episode. We should talk about that. When you think about abortion, when you think about a birth control, we have abortion today in our society because we have birth control. Because birth control fundamentally changed what sex was supposed to be about. Sex was redefined from something that was done within a committed relationship to unify two partners who have chosen to spend their life together, to procreate, to create a family, a legacy. Birth control changed that and said, well, sex can just be for fun. It can be for not for procreating another human being. And because we know birth control isn't 100% effective, we know the condom condom rate, the annual failure rate for a condom is about 18% a year. The annual failure rate for the birth control pill is about 9% a year. By the way, if I knew the airplane I was getting into tomorrow had an 18% or even 9% failure rate, there'd be no way in hell I'd get on that plane, but whatever. Because we know birth control isn't 100% effective, and it never, quite frankly, will be, abortion had to be introduced. So abortion became that backup method because sex was changed and you weren't engaging in sex to create another human being. Hell, you weren't even in having a sexual relationship with someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. And so that's why, you have birth control, then it leads right into abortion. And so what abortion has allowed men to do since 1973, for the past 40 some years, is abortion's given men an out where they can have sex, have their jollies, but then not be responsible for anything. And it is many times when she becomes pregnant, she's the one who has to make the decision whether or not she's going to choose life for her child and become a single mother, whether she's going to choose to place her child with an adoptive family, or whether or not she's going to choose abortion. The man is nowhere to be seen. And in fact, we have a whole generation of men who've been told by their mothers to keep their mouth shut, that they don't have an opinion on this, which it's really quite sad because even we know at Students for Life, the people I've personally interviewed for my first book, Courageous. I say first book because I'm trying to write my second book, but things keep happening. But when we were interviewing students with Courageous, I wanted to interview students who had saved lives, stopped, someone from having an abortion, who themselves became pregnant and chose life, or chose adoption, or chose abortion. And what was interesting was every single person that I had interviewed for Courageous who was in that crisis, unplanned pregnancy situation, it was always that woman who didn't have anyone in her life to tell her not to have an abortion to end up having the abortion. It was the woman who found somebody in her life who said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I don't think you should have the abortion, that chose life. And when we look at statistics about partners and the role that partners play and the influence partners play, we know partners play a big role. And we've received those calls at Students for Life of men saying, I don't want to have the abortion. I don't want to go through it. What should I do? And we say, tell her. Just tell her. It's not always going to solve your problems. We've had men before call who've promised to take the child, to pay for everything, and the mother still aborts their child, and the father has no legal recourse. But in many circumstances, we know we can stop these abortions by the two partners actually speaking and both saying, I don't want to have this abortion, because at the end of the day, no one ever wants to have an abortion. But what abortion has allowed is men to get off scot-free and to not have responsibility. So this is why we've seen all of these articles starting to pop up in the blogosphere, the pro-abortion blogs about men, why men should care about abortion. There was like this crazy article in the New York Times earlier in June talking about this issue, and it was like all the things that could happen to men, and men would be put in jail if abortion was ever made illegal because they drove these women to abortion. And so there was all these like crazy things trying to like gin up men to be against common sense abortion bans. But I think it's interesting that now the pro-choice movement says that men care, because for so long they've said men don't care. No uterus, no opinion. Now, by the way, what's really funny is when I get protested by men who hold up signs saying no uterus, no opinion. I'm like, do you realize you don't have a uterus? But maybe sometimes I don't think they do. They maybe think they do. I don't know. I think it's very telling right now when we're seeing these abortion bans being passed in the States. Now the abortion industry is trying to scare men into taking action, taking stand, and joining the pro-abortion movement. When for so long, the past 46 years, we've told men that they don't have a say, and men have gotten off scot-free and have had zero responsibility. And this is wrong. This is what the pro-life movement has been saying all along, that men do have responsibility here. And they do have to to help her, and they should be forced to help the woman they impregnated. They should be forced to pay child support for the children that they create. This is common sense, and this is actually where I think there can be actually a lot of common ground found between the pro-life movement and the feminist movement, right? Where if she chooses life, that he should be forced to pay child support because he was just much responsible for that creation of the new human life as she was. I think these pro-life laws, ultimately, these laws have been passed in states, hold men responsible for their actions. They're holding men responsible for actions. No longer, if abortion's not legal, men just can't walk away. They can't just say, hey, I'll give you $400 and get it taken care of. They will be responsible for their actions. And I think that's really important. And the fact that the pro-abortion industry, the abortion advocates want men to get freaked out right now, want men to be upset by this, I think this is very telling because it's showing that men just haven't been involved, and we've told men not to be involved, and that's absolutely wrong. Men should be financially responsible for the kids they can create. Men should be responsible for protecting their children. Men should be responsible for protecting their partners, protecting them from the predatory abortion industry. That's what men are. They're supposed to be our protectors, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then there was this article, and I want to point it out. It was in The Nation, and it was talking about, why men should care about these abortion bans. And then it was saying, what the real goal of the abortion, the pro-life movement is, it's not just to ban abortion. It's to promote traditional conservative families. And so they actually said in the article that there was no evidence, that there was no scientific consensus, was the term they used, scientific consensus, that two-parent married families are the superior type of families for children and society at large. They said that poverty and other economic risks are largely avoidable if women stop making supposedly bad choices, become parents without first marrying. These claims lack any clear scientific consensus. That's just wrong, by the way. If you ever hear that in any of your discussions about abortion, research affirms over and over again that children need two parents, a mom and a dad, and that's good for them. I'll give you some stats, and I'm just going to throw a bunch out there at one time. 37% of families led by single mothers nationwide live in poverty. Comparatively, only 6.8% of families with married parents live in poverty. 63% of youth suicides, 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger, 71% of all high school dropouts, 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, 70% of all juveniles in state-operated institutions, all came from single-parent families. There's clearly something going on here. And it doesn't mean that if you came from a single-parent family, you're going to become a rapist or you're going to end up in an abuse center. But there's clearly, the science, statistics are showing us that there's something wrong here. Even the liberal, pro-abortion leaning Atlantic says, quote, there was a large body of literature showing that children of single mothers are more likely to commit crimes than children who grew up with their married parents. This is not just true in the United States, but wherever the issue has been researched. So parents do matter. Married parents do matter. And a child thrives when the child has a mother and father. But for so long, the abortion industry has been telling men that they don't matter. In fact, in this research study that Students for Life is conducting, it's going to take several months to do, and I can't share with you all details, even though I want to. What was fascinating in some of the interviews we've started conducting in this research study we're doing on messaging and how to convert and win hearts and minds on this issue, some of the hardest minds to win over to our side. What was one thing that I found really shocking in all the interviews that we conducted with women, not once did a man come up. Not once in the discussion, in the interview with these are 90-minute to 2 hour long interviews that we do one-on-one. Not once when talking about abortion did it ever come up that the man should be involved, that the father of the child should be involved, that he should be consulted, he should be asked for support. That's pretty shocking. I think it's very telling of where we are as a society, that we tell men that they have no legal recourse, that they have no voice. But now, because of all these abortion bans, now the abortion industry is walking it back and saying, men, you should care. You should care because the way you're living your life is about to change. Because right now you have no responsibility, that you can use us, impregnate us, you can give us money and force us to go to the abortion facility. And that's okay with the abortion industry. But now you might have to reevaluate who you're sleeping with. Now you have to consider that when you do lie with another woman, that you could create a unique, whole living human being, a very natural consequence of sex, and you could be fiscally responsible for the well-being of that child. And you could be responsible for raising that child in this world. I just find that so shocking that the abortion industry all of a sudden now, after years of silencing men, telling men that they have no voice, they have no say, which we know in the pro-life movement is not true, that all of a sudden now they want to say that men care. Why? Because they need them to gin up their poll numbers. They need them to vote for pro-abortion politicians. It's the pro-life movement that's been saying over and over again that genders, we don't care your gender. We want you to be a part of our movement. And that our argument, our philosophically sound argument, our science-based argument doesn't have gender, right? That arguments don't have gender. You can't, an argument isn't right or wrong depending on the gender arguing for it. An argument's either right or it's either wrong. It doesn't matter the gender of the person making the argument. And we've been the ones in the pro-life movement over and over again saying, come to our movement, be a part of us. You do have a say. And your voice actually matters, because we know what the statistics show us, that when men speak out, when men tell their partners, I don't want you to have the abortion, I'll help you, I'll be there to support you, it matters. And she will choose life. Not always, but she will choose life. And that's what she's looking for. That's what she's looking for. I talked about when I wrote Courageous, I interviewed people. Some of the saddest stories I saw was when I interviewed couples, or I interviewed someone and then they talked about their boyfriend in the interview. And it was always this sad case where she didn't want to have the abortion and he didn't want to have the abortion, but neither of them actually said it to each other. He thought he was supposed to stay quiet. She was just going along with what she thought she had to do. But secretly, it's kind of like when, my husband says, what do you want for Valentine's Day? And I say nothing. I don't need anything. But really secretly in my mind going, chocolate-covered strawberries, flowers, something to appreciate me, to show that you love me. But if he asks me, I'll say nothing. And that's why men get so upset, right? Because when they don't get you anything, and if you get upset, they're like, but you told me not to get you anything. Women, we do that a lot with many issues. And it's not different when it comes to abortion. She says, well, I guess I should get it taken care of. And he says, okay. She doesn't want to have the abortion. And he doesn't want to have the abortion, but neither one of them have actually communicated that to each other. That's so tragic. And we see this time and time again. And I saw it when I interviewed folks for the Courageous book. So yes, abortion bans in Alabama, in Georgia, Ohio, Missouri, and they're going to keep going on and on and on. Abortion bans matter. Abortion bans save lives. Abortion bans are going to make men and women more responsible for their decisions. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, I think all of us should be a little bit more responsible in our sexual decisions that we make. I mean, we're living in what the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, has actually described an STD epidemic, despite the fact that condoms are available everywhere, that they're handed out in brown paper bags in freshman orientation week, that you could get them in the student health center in your high school. Things aren't changing, even though everything we're supposed to know about safe sex and condoms are everywhere. Men should be more responsible for their sexual decisions, as should women. That's a good thing. So, hey, this is just a few thoughts of mine this week, a quick Explicitly Pro-Life. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you find me on Instagram, Kristen Mercer Hawkins. If you have future ideas, topics you want me to cover, questions you have for this podcast, make sure you shoot me a message, or you can comment down below in YouTube, or even if you're watching this on Facebook, and make sure you subscribe so you can be the first to get all the episodes of Explicitly Pro-Life, and you'll get them 100% without the shortcuts we make for Facebook and without the filter. So thanks for tuning in. See you next week, guys.